It's that time of year again. 2019 is officially drawing to a close, and that means it's time for me to count down my best movies of the year list for this channel. You guys probably already know this is my favorite video to make all year. I always have so much fun counting down all my favorite films. And just a couple of things before I get into it. These are only my personal picks for the best movies of 2019. They have no bearing on any other outside categories like box office or award season. You might see some huge blockbuster movies on here that I really enjoyed, or also some smaller independent films. These are just the films that I enjoyed the most out of 2019. And you may agree with a lot of the films on this list, you may disagree with a lot of them. That's kind of what's supposed to happen. Film is subjective, we all have different opinions. And oh my god, what an amazing year it has been for film. There were so many good movies this year, and this year kind of did like a 180 on me because I remember midway through the year thinking that it was kind of a really disappointing year for movies. I even tweeted about it at one point. But then once we hit like October, so many great films just started coming out of nowhere. And I honestly think this has been one of the best years for film in this decade. But yeah, overall, I could not have been happier with what we got from film in the year 2019. Arguably one of the best years in recent memory. And before I get started with the list, there are a few films that I feel I should note before I make the list, because these are some movies that everyone else really loved, but I haven't gotten the chance to see them yet, just so you guys aren't concerned as to why they're not on the list. Dr. Sleep was one that I was really excited to see, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't find time to go see it when it came out. There was just a lot going on. I definitely will be seeing that sometime in the future. Also, 1917, the new Sam Mendes war film that everyone's talking about, doesn't come to my area until like mid-January once it gets a wider release. And Portrait of a Lady on Fire is one that I heard a lot of good things about, but it only released in like LA and New York this year. So I'll definitely see it when it gets a wider release this February. So those are all the films that I felt like I should note before I make this list. There's always like a few that I can't see for some reason. And now we get into what are my honorable mentions. These are films that I thought were really great, but for whatever reason, just couldn't quite get a spot on my top 10. And this year I'm gonna do something a little bit different. Most years I'll just read off the list of my honorable mentions and not really talk about the films. But this year I actually want to say something about each of them, because since I've been away at college, there's a lot of films on this list that I couldn't really get the time to talk about. And now that I do have the chance to talk about these movies, I really want to say something about each of them. Dark Waters, I think, is one of the most important films of the year. This is a true story about a man who stands up to corruption from this chemical company, DuPont. The story is told through an absolutely stellar performance from Mark Ruffalo. The guy is fantastic in this role. Watching this man go up against a company that he's essentially supposed to be defending, it's an incredible story of integrity and fighting for what is right, and I think those kind of films are really important this day and age. And also I think it has one of the best endings that I saw this year. The Peanut Butter Falcon is one of the few films this year that just brought me pure, unbridled joy. I had a huge smile on my face from pretty much the start of this movie to the end of it. It's extremely funny. I thought it was really heartwarming. And there really wasn't a single moment that I was bored by it or that I felt dragged in any way. Also, I think the film has a really good message in that it shows you that you shouldn't look down on other people just because they're different from you in any way. Little Women was another film that filled me with joy this year. Even though this movie has a lot of dark and sad moments within it, overall it's a very lighthearted film. And I think Greta Gerwig did a really good job at meshing the tones. This is one of the best casts of the year. Everyone across the board is doing a great job. Laura Dern, Meryl Streep, Florence Pugh, Emma Watson, especially Saoirse Ronan. Also, this is a gorgeous looking movie. It's shot incredibly well. The cinematography is breathtaking. This is definitely a film that's been adapted several times before, but I'm just really happy with Greta Gerwig's interpretation of it. Joker is a film that I will say I'm not as crazy about as everybody else is. I think in some ways this movie has a lot to say, but in others where it could, it just kind of doesn't. And also some of the dialogue just didn't really work for me. That being said, this film had a bigger impact on me than most films did this year. I felt so profoundly shitty after I watched this movie. And that's because I really sympathize with Arthur Fleck, and the movie does a really good job at making you see the world through his point of view. The score also is one of the best that I heard this year. It's really haunting and kind of gets inside your head that way. Also, you cannot talk about this film without mentioning Joaquin Phoenix. The guy is a legend. He was so committed to this character, and he elevates this movie in a way that no other actor could. This is definitely a performance that we'll all be talking about for a really long time, and rightfully so. Uncut Gems is such an exhausting movie, but in the best kind of way. The Safdie brothers and Adam Sandler take you on this extremely tense ride that has you white-knuckled through the majority of the runtime. It's elevated by a great performance from Adam Sandler. I think this might be the best work that I've ever seen from him. His character's kind of a shitty person, but Adam Sandler is so charming in the role that you're able to kind of look past it and just have fun with it. And in my opinion, he knocked it out of the park here. Also, Julia Fox is really good in her role as well. I think she probably has a really promising career ahead. And my last honorable mention is Knives Out. This is such a fun movie, a really engaging murder mystery. It has a phenomenal cast, definitely one of the best ensembles we had this year, and by far the biggest standouts for me in this film were Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, and especially Ana de Armas. I had no idea she was this good of an actress. Rian Johnson's direction is so good. It's really great to see him make smaller films like this because he's proven to us that he really knows what he's doing behind the camera, whether that be with a huge blockbuster or with a smaller murder mystery like this. So those are all my honorable mentions. Looking back on it now, those are probably some of the best honorable mentions that I've had making these kinds of videos. All those films are really great, and you definitely need to check them out if you do get the chance. Now that we're done with those, let's get onto the list. This is my number 10 pick. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an absolute blast of a film. The first time I saw it though, I honestly was just kind of confused by it just because it was so unlike anything I had seen from Tarantino before. But after subsequent viewings, that's honestly the reason why I like it so much. You can just tell that this movie is made by someone who's having so much fun behind the camera, paying homage to a decade that clearly inspired him a lot. And that's something I've always loved about Tarantino. You can tell that his films are made by someone who just loves cinema. As with all of his films, this movie is incredibly well shot. They do a really good job at capturing 60s Hollywood. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt deliver some hilarious performances. They have great chemistry, and they make the movie so much fun to watch. And the finale of this film is one of the best things Tarantino has ever put to screen, and it's something I will never forget. Just as a heads up, I had to record this video over the course of 2 days, so that's why my outfit changed and why the lighting may be a little bit different right now. But anyway, let's get back to the video. Jordan Peele is continuing to deliver top-tier horror filmmaking to us, and I think this film was even better than his last. Us is the rare type of film that anyone can see and walk away with their own interpretation of it. That's just how ambiguous this movie is, and it almost adds a layer into how unsettling it is. But also I think the film has a lot to say about how we are our own worst enemies, and I think that aspect of the movie is really interesting. Lupita Nyong'o gave one of the best performances of the year. This performance required so much from her as she kind of has to play two different characters, and she pulled it off insanely well. The scene where the family meets the doppelgangers is one that had me on the edge of my seat. Us is a film that I found terrifying, but after I saw it, I also wanted to dissect all of its hidden meanings. And that's pretty much everything I want out of a horror film. Ford v Ferrari. How could you possibly see this movie and not be entertained by it? That's pretty much impossible. It has something for everyone. If you want to see riveting dialogue and great performances, you definitely get that from Christian Bale and Matt Damon, who play off of each other so well. But then you also get these amazing racing sequences that are by far some of the best that I've seen in a really long time. It's an enthralling story of two guys trying to stick it to a corporate system and defy the odds by essentially just doing what they love. It's 2.5 hours long, but it doesn't feel like it's half that thanks to James Mangold's direction. He added such an energy to this film, and it's by far one of the most entertaining experiences you can have with a movie all year. I am a lifelong fan of Toy Story. This is the first film series that I've ever loved. So naturally, when Pixar announced they were making a fourth entry into the franchise, considering how perfect all the other three movies were, I was kind of terrified. Luckily, Toy Story 4 turned out to be one of the biggest surprises of the year. I have seen this movie 3 times now, and there's not a single sequence that I don't love or at least like. Josh Cooley's direction is on point and fine-tuned, and in keeping with the original trilogy, there's not a single dull moment in the entire film. At its core, it's a heartfelt story of growing older and accepting a new beginning, and while it is by far the funniest film in the franchise, it doesn't lose any of the emotion that made Toy Story what it is. And the finale of this movie was one of the most emotional things I have ever experienced in a theater. This film was everything I wanted it to be. Jojo Rabbit is a beautifully crafted satire, one that's filled with scenes that will make you laugh, but also scenes that are emotionally devastating. It takes some very dark subject matter, but showcases it in a lighthearted way, as it's told through the perspective of a young boy who is obsessed with Hitler. Roman Griffin Davis gives the best child performance of the year, and part of the reason this movie works so well is because of his acting. Scarlett Johansson is also doing an amazing job, as well as Taika Waititi. This movie could definitely ruffle some feathers, as it pokes fun at Hitler and the Holocaust, but it's done in such a way that it's able to get away with it. It's such a beautiful story, one that teaches people about love and acceptance rather than hatred. Without a doubt, one of the most unique films that we had this year, and I hope Taika Waititi makes movies forever. Avengers Endgame is the peak of blockbuster filmmaking. This is one of the best experiences I ever had in a movie theater watching it for the first time, and I really could not have asked for the conclusion of the last 11 years of Marvel Cinematic Universe films to be anything more than it was. The film follows all of our heroes in their most desperate hour, the stakes felt so real, and every sequence is emotionally earned. The Russo brothers gave us an extremely emotionally satisfying film, one that contains a finale that will go down in history as one of the best things we've ever gotten from superhero cinema, but also one that never forgets why we've all been so invested in the Marvel Universe from the very beginning, and that is the characters. Avengers Endgame is everything you could ever want in a superhero film, and I am so happy to be living in a time where the Marvel Universe has been fully realized on screen. Few films I've seen utilize visual storytelling in the brilliant way that Parasite does. This is a wonderful social satire which depicts the class divide between the rich and the poor extremely well, and in such a fascinating way as well. One of my favorite scenes in this film is when a rainstorm happens, and the wealthy family looks outside and relishes in how beautiful it is, while the poor family trudges through their flooding neighborhood just trying to keep their home safe. There's a point towards the middle of the film where it switches genres in a way and becomes something else entirely, but Bong Joon-ho somehow finds a way to make it all feel seamless. Parasite manages to be funny, riveting, and engaging, while also being a devastating and crushing look at modern-day society, brought to life with masterful camera work and stunning cinematography. With Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach gave us a heartbreaking feature about divorce and the toll that it takes on a couple, but he does it in such a way that it feels like a love story. It doesn't make you root for one person or the other, but rather allows its audience to understand the perspective of both characters and why they feel the way they do, and both of their motivations are incredibly well realized. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson deliver two of the best performances I've seen this year, and also a 15 to 20 minute sequence which has, without a doubt, the best acting of 2019. Extremely well written, directed, and acted, Marriage Story completely sucks you in and makes you feel as though you're watching two real people figure out their lives together. And as far as character-driven movies go, this is some of the best filmmaking you can get. Martin Scorsese has been making movies for nearly 50 years now, and with each new film he makes, he proves to us that he has not lost a single step, because The Irishman might be one of his best. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, all three feel as though they're improvising in every scene. Not a single line in this film feels scripted, without a doubt the best they've been in years. It's an epic story spanning multiple generations and taking you through some key moments in American history as you follow union leads and mob bosses. But the film also has a lot to say. It's a very reflective film, one that wants to spend time with its characters and really dive into how they're feeling at times. Also, mafia films never really show you the aftermath of the life of crime. You really only ever see the peak of it, but this film explores what it's like to have experienced that life and looking back on it many years later. And in that way, I think this is an extremely deep movie, one that makes you feel as though you've grown old with its characters by the time it's over. Every aspect of The Irishman is mesmerizing. If you have not seen it, you're doing yourself a disservice. Please, if you have the time, go and check it out, because The Irishman is one of the best films of the year. So we've finally reached my #1 film of 2019. You guys probably don't know what it is because I never got the chance to talk about it on this channel. This movie's definitely not for everybody. I can totally understand someone not liking it, but for me, this is the film that did not disappoint me in a single way. This film was the only time I went to a movie theater and actually had an experience unlike anything else I had ever seen before, and that film is... In my view, The Lighthouse is a prime example of cinema in its purest form. This movie is completely detached from the trends of today, completely detached from focus groups and studio heads sitting in a room making decisions about everything that happens in a film. This movie is made by a filmmaker with a vision who was able to execute said vision with no interferences, and for that reason, I think it's the most unique experience I've had with a movie in all of 2019. Robert Eggers' direction is so meticulous and fine-tuned that there comes a point in this film where you forget that you're watching a movie. The performances from Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe are top tier, and they heighten this movie in such a way that makes you never want to take your eyes off the screen. It's a very simple film on the surface, but once you peel back the layers, it has some absolutely fascinating hidden meanings that will keep you thinking long after the credits roll. From a visual standpoint, it evokes its time period phenomenally well. It looks like a film that could have been made decades ago. The score is also very haunting. When I go to a film, I want to be transported somewhere else. And more than any other film this year, The Lighthouse did that for me. It's masterfully crafted, beautifully directed, It has two enthralling performances from Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. It knew when it wanted to be extremely tense, but also hilarious at times. And for all these reasons, it is my favorite film of 2019. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who stuck with me this year. I know it's been very on and off because I just started college, but I cannot tell you how much fun I have being able to talk about these movies and making these videos, and that you guys actually watch them. It really means the world to me. Also, I'm not going anywhere. You can expect a most anticipated movies of 2020 video sometime this week. I cannot wait to talk about those films. And how did you feel about my list? Did you agree with my picks? Did you disagree with them? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.